Rabotai. First of all, I apologize for coming a bit late. As you know, yesterday was President's Day, so the kids had no bus service. It's understandable. But why they have no bus service today, I'm not quite sure. It's Isru Chag, maybe Yom Tov Sheni, whatever. What? The whole week. The whole week. But in any event, Morai Rabotai, I want to read to you a famous pasuk where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Hinei yamim ba'im neum Hashem Elokim ve'ishlachti rav ba'aretz, I will send a hunger into the land, lo rav lelechem ve'lo tzama lamayim. It's not going to be hunger for bread or thirst for water, rather ki'im lishmo et dvar Hashem, rather to hear the words of Hashem. And Baruch Hashem, we see this pasuk. We see this pasuk being nitkayem in our generation. It's taking place before our very own eyes, where Baruch Hashem, you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world that are finding the truth. They're dropping the old way of life, a life of hefkerut, and they're accepting upon themselves a life of Torah, a life of purpose. Right, Baruch Hashem, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. But in any event, Morai V'Rabotai, you know, being that we have such an influx of Baalei Tshuva, there's always many interesting questions that pop up. The Gdolei Israel, the Morei Hora'ah have these interesting questions that are brought before them, and it's so beautiful to see how they dissect these questions. So we know there's many great lecturers and Rabbanim that go from city to city to inspire Jews, you know, that are far from the path of Torah. They go there to give some chizuk, inspiration, guidance. And in Israel, you have many such organizations where the Rabbanim Mamish go one day they're in Haifa, and then they're in Tel Aviv, and Rishon LeZion, and then they go here and there. Every night they go from one city to another in order to inspire their fellow brothers.
It's called outreach.
Outreach, of course. So in any event, Morai V'Rabotai, what happened was, there's a Maaseh Shaya as follows. Very interesting case. There was a rabbi that was on his way to the city of Ashkelon. Ashkelon, as we know, is in the southern part of Eretz Israel. And we know that over the past few years, unfortunately, Ashkelon has been hit with hundreds of rockets coming in from Gaza. And it's been very, very frightening to live over there. And these rockets could be hitting anywhere, at any point. A parked car, a house, a school, a house, whatever. It's random attacks. So as this Rav was driving out to give this shiur, he enters the city and he hears the siren go off. You know, when you hear that siren go off, that usually means that you have a few seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, whatever it is, to go find some shelter, run for your life, basically. And Be'emet, this Rav hears the siren, he pulls over to the side in a very, very quick fashion, he runs out of the car, looks for somewhere to hide. Baruch Hashem, he finds shelter. A few minutes goes by, everything is nice and clear, nothing happens in his territory. But as he comes back out to go to his car, he sees that his car is surrounded by a bunch of Russian immigrants. And he's not quite sure why. What happened? You know, are they trying to hijack my car? Did I do something to them? I mean, what exactly happened over here? And as he's inching forward and closer to his car, he notices that some of them are in pain and they're crying. And he sees that lying on the floor is a dead dog. Apparently, as he was pulling his car over, he ran over the dog. And he's apologizing profusely. Be'emet, slicha, I didn't mean it. I didn't see it. You know, I heard the siren. I just quickly pulled over to the side. And please forgive me, I'm willing to pay for the dog. It wasn't my fault. And they're hearing the story. They see his mamash. Obviously, he's not making this up. In fact, the fact that they let go of the dog, that showed that they too were under lachatz, under pressure because of the sirens. And they basically forgave him. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault. We realize it. You know, everyone was under pressure. We ran this way. You ran that way. Beseder. The mamash gave him full mechila for what he had done. But now, Morai V'Rabotai, what happens is the story doesn't end there. This rabbi builds a nice relationship with these individuals, where they started to invite him to give shiurim in their city of Ashkelon on a consistent basis. He comes in 1 week, in the second week. I'm making this up. It's a Maaseh Shaya. I'll tell you right now, everything, all the sources in the second. Where, which Rav had this Shiloh come before him. We'll go through all the details right now. So what happened was, they invited him 1 week, a second week, third week. They built a good relationship with him. Baruch Hashem, people are starting to keep more Torah mitzvot, kashrut, Shabbat, the whole 9 yards. And eventually they get to the point where they get so inspired. They tell the rabbi, Kod Arav, we're ready to open up our own little Bet Midrash, our own Beis Medrash. We don't want to have a shiur once a week, whatever it is. We want to have Torah on a nightly basis. You come in, your chaverim come inspire us. The rabbi says, amazing idea, tremendous idea. I think it's a great plan. I'm going to help you make it happen. So Rabbi, we have a portion of our attic, our basement, whatever it is, we have a certain property that we want to redesign, make it into Bet Midrash, lezakot et harabim, in order to inspire other people. Great. As they go along with this plan, they get ready for the grand opening, Chanukat HaBayit, and they tell the Rabbi, we decided to name our Bet Midrash Zichron Igor. Zichron Igor. So the rabbi says, beautiful, I think it's a great idea. Who is Igor? Is it your father, your wife's father? Whose father is Igor?
Dog.
So they say, no, not my father. It's the name of the dog that you killed. We're naming the shul after the dog.
I got that right away.
Morai Rabotai.
I got it before you, but that's okay.
So what do you do in that case? Do you allow them to name the shul after the dog? Or do you have to say, hey, it's a kavod, it's a respectful, it's a Bet Midrash? Name it. Zichron Avel Yashiv, Zichron Avel Vayo, Zichron Igor? What's going on over here? But the Rav kept quiet, and he brought this Shiloh before Avel Yashiv's son-in-law, Rav Zilberstein. Ma lasot? Should we be meiches? Should we protest this idea? Or should we go along with it? Ma ta omer?
Oh, I got an idea.
What would you do?
I would say, you say Zikron, what's the
Igor.
Zikron Igra. Igra meaning schar, meaning reward. You have Shin and Shem, and you make everybody happy. Zikron Igra.
Okay, and again,
I would have done.
That's what you would have done. What if they tell you, hey, what are you doing? Our dog's name was Igor, not Agra, not Gra, not something else.
That's the name of this color.
Well, Agra de Pirka.
A different dog.
Shamati dvarecha. Okay, I hear exactly what you're saying. Let's see how Rav Zilberstein dissected this case. Let's see what he said. Again, you have to know sensitivity. Especially people that have dogs, they have a certain attachment. It says that a kelev is kulo lev. Kelev, kulo lev. He gives his heart for his owner, for his balabait. I mean, he listens to his master. And some people that have a dog, it's like their child. Mamish. That's how they raise it. So that's a child that popped up. Let's see how he answered this question. There's a Gemara in Yuma that's on your sheet on the top right. We're going to quickly read it. You really don't have to read the whole Gemara, but just read it over here very quickly. And Daf Tet Amud Aleph. Everyone has a sheet over here? If you don't, just share with the person next to you. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Turta. Rabbi Yochanan ben Turta says, Mipnei ma charva Shiloh. Why was Shiloh destroyed? We know when Am Yisrael entered Israel for the first time, they stayed in the city of Gilgal, right? That was right outside of Yericho. That's where the Mishkan was there for 14 years. And eventually they moved it to Shiloh. And it stayed in Shiloh for how long? For 369 years. 369 years in Shiloh. So says Rav Yochanan ben Turta, why was Mishkan Shiloh destroyed? Now we know that Mishkan Shiloh was destroyed in whose generation? At the time of Eli Kohen. Eli Kohen had 2 sons, Chofni and Pinchas. Right? Eli was the man who was the Kohen that had questioned Chana. Chana, we know, was married to Elkanah. She had no children. Right? Eventually, Penina married Elkanah as well. She had 10 children. And Chana went to Shiloh, and she was crying, and she was begging Kadosh Baruch Hu, give me one child, what I wanted for, exactly. And Eli had misinterpreted the Urim v'Tumim, and he thought she was shikora, he thought she was drunk. And he accused her of being drunk. He said, hey, Giveret, go home, come back when you are sober. She started crying to him, I'm not drunk. Chas v'shalom, I'm here, I'm a broken-hearted woman, I'm praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She didn't necessarily tell him what it was for. But being that he was choshed b'ksherim, he had suspected, he had doubted, he had questioned someone that was kasher. Therefore, he gave her a bracha. He blessed her. Whatever you ask for, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give you. And Be'emet, what she had asked for was a baby. Was a baby. She had a baby boy, Shmuel Hanavi, as we all know the story. Right? Eventually she had more children, yes. And we know what the Chachamim tell us, that when she had a child, Pnina had lost two of hers, Rahman Hatzam. But that's not for now. Morai v'Rabotai. So Eli was the Kohen Gadol at the time. Now what happened was, his children, unfortunately, were not acting 100% properly. As Rav Yochanan Meturta says over here, why was Mishkan Shiloh destroyed? Mipnei shehayu ba shnei dvarim. There were two things that took place over there. Two major cardinal sins, two sins that took place. Number one was Gilu Arayot. Number one was immorality. And number two was Bizayon Kochim. Was degrading the Kochim. They weren't conducting themselves properly over there. And then the Gemara says, yes, it's true that the Pasuk talks about Eli's children, Chofni and Pinchas, as if they were Chas v'Shalom, Tishkevunim Anashim, as if they had Chas v'Shalom been with the women that came to the Mishkan to offer sacrifices. The Gemara says, no, don't think like that. Anyone that thinks they actually sinned is To'eh. He's making a mistake. But really what they did was, they had a certain ta'ava for the Korbanot, and those that came, the women that came after they gave birth, after being a Zavah, they would bring, birds, doves, nothing special, and they would make these women wait a long time, and they would take the more chunkier korbanot, quote unquote, and the women many times had to wait overnight. They couldn't go back to their husbands, so therefore, ma'aleh v'katuv, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as if they actually did the avirah. Yeah. But whatever the case may be, because of their lack of kavod, therefore the Mishkan was eventually destroyed. Eli Kohen had a Navi come to him. The Mefarshim say it was Shmuel's father, Elkanah, and he warned him that because of your children, there'll be tremendous destruction. Asher titzalena oznav, anyone that hears what's going to happen, their ears are going to ring. Right? And eventually Shmuel Hanavi himself had a prophecy, and he was told about what's going to happen. And Be'emet, we went out to war against the Pelishtim. We lost that war. Chofni and Pinchas were both killed at that war. The Mishkan was destroyed. The Aron HaKodesh was taken away. And when Eli Kohen heard about this, he fell off his chair and he died instantly. So why was it destroyed, Shiloh? Because of Gilu Arayot, immorality, promiscuity, and because of Bizayon HaKodshim. Who is the author of this statement? Rav Yochanan Meturta. If you look at the next page, Ted Amud Bet, which is right next to it on the sheets, you'll see we underline on the first wide line, Mikdash Rishon Mipnei Macharev. The first Beit HaMikdash, why was that destroyed? It's another question Rabbi Yochanan Meturta discusses. And he says, Mipnei Gimel Devarim, because of three things. And what were they? It is Avodah Zarah, Gilu Arayot, Veshvichut Damim. Right? These are the three Averot Chamorot. Idol worship, murder, and Gilu Arayot. That is the cause of the first Beit HaMikdash being destroyed. Morai v'Rabotai, the author of these statements is Rav Yochanan ben Turta. Who is this Rav Yochanan ben Turta? Anyone knows his history? Who is this individual? Did you ever hear of him in the Gemara before, Rav Yochanan ben Turta? So Tosfot Yeshanim gives us a one-liner as to who he was. And now we're going to tell you the story behind that one-liner. Listen carefully. The Midrash brings out as follows. There was a certain Chacham, a Chassid. There's a very pious individual. There's a very pious individual that was a tzaddik, and he was mamish oved Hashem, and he had one cow. That was his source of parnasah. He used to work the field, milk the cow, whatever it may be. What happened was, one day, this chassid's life had a turn for the worst. He's having many financial difficulties. He's having hardships, hard times, and he needed some money up front. And he had no choice other than to sell his cow. He puts up a for sale sign, and he has different buyers interested, negotiating back and forth. Eventually he found a buyer. Some guy came along. I'm interested. They worked out the details. Shalom u'bracha. The deal was made. He sells the cow, he gets the money he needs, the guy is happy, the chassid is happy, everyone moves on with their lives. The first day the guy has this animal, does his job. Monday does his job. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Comes along Shabbat, and Shabbos, this animal decides to take a little break. And the owner comes, starts beating it, then starts this, and starts this, mekach ta'ut, this guy lied to me, he fooled me, he looks pious, but he's a fraud. Right? He goes back to this chassid's house, and he says, excuse me, what is it? You gave me some damaged goods? This animal, he's not lasting. In 5-6 days you're working, now he refuses to even move. You gave me damaged goods, I want my money back. The chassid hears this, says, no, chas v'shalom, this thing has been very loyal for years. He does his job. Let me just talk to him. Talk to him? What do you mean talk to him? You talk to the animal, to the parah, to the cow. So the chassid goes over, and he whispers to the cow, and he tells the cow, oi, my dear cow, as long as you were under my ownership, as long as I owned you, you had a day off. Shabbat was a day off. I can't work my animals on Shabbat. But now, because of my great sins, I have to sell you. And now you're under the ownership of a goy. You have to listen to your owner. Go work for him. And Be'emet, the cow started behaving himself. And he realized that he has to go listen to his owner. The guy sees this. He's appalled. Like, what are you doing? Witchcraft? What's going on? Are you talking to an animal? But whatever the case may be, he sees that the animal starts doing as this chassid tells him. And the chassid explains to him what the situation was. Jews don't have animals work on Shabbat. We let it rest. And the guy gets amazed. He gets inspired. And he says, how could it be that we have over here an animal that has no chokhmah, no binah, no dat, right? This animal knows what it means to work for his creator. He knows what it means to serve his creator, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in whatever which way he does. And I, a human being that's created in the image of God, I'm just living a life of hefkerut. It can't be. How can it be? And this person, miyad nidgayer. He converted immediately. He says, I want to join Am Yisrael. He got started. Next thing you know, he was converted to Yitzchak. So now, as Tosfot Yeshani points out, this man was what? Nidgayer de para. He became a convert due to the cow. Yeah. But wait, doesn't end there. So now he has to choose a name. So what's your name?
Porta.
He says, my name is Yochanan. I want to choose Yochanan. Okay, Yochanan ben Avraham. No, not ben Avraham. Yochanan ben Turta. What's Turta? Torah. Torah's a cow. Yochanan, the son of a cow. That's the name that he chose. And the Chachamim went out moched. They didn't say, hey, this is a... They let, and he became one of the leading Rabbanim. Rabbi Yochanan, you're recording him all the time. You're recording him, the famous pshat as to why the first Beit Mikdash was destroyed was quoted, but he's the one that said it.
So the cow gets his day off again.
So Morai v'Rabotai, you should know, generally a ger, they usually go by the name Ben Avraham. Yeah. You know, there's a ma'amar in Pirkei Avot, Ben Bagbag Omer. What does Ben Bagbag say? Hafoch ba v'hafoch ba dekula ba. Right? Hafoch ba. Who's Ben Bagbag? What kind of name is Bagbag? Who would name? Whose name Ben Bagbag? Ben Hey? What kind of names are these?
Here.
So the Mefarshim point out that he too was a guy, and it would have been a tremendous insult to his family and to his community if they find out that he converted to Judaism. So he called himself Ben Bagbag, the son of Bag and Bag. Bag is gematria 5, 2 and 3. Ben is 2, Gimel is 3. He's a son of 5 and 5. We know Abraham and Sarah had a hey added to their names. Right? That's a numerical value of 5. He said, I am the son of Abraham and Sarah. Right? Ben Bag, son of 5 and 5. Now why didn't he call himself Ben Hey? Because his friend already called himself Ben Hey. Right? But whatever the case may be, the minhag of converts is to name themselves as sons of Abraham and Sarah. That's what it is. So he, Rav Yochanan, comes along and he said, no, Rav Yochanan Meturta. Why? Because I became, because of the Shem says, Nidgayer al yedeh para. Because he converted thanks to a cow, ad kedei kach, that he called himself Ben Turta, the son of a cow. Based on this, it would seem, no, beseder, the cow inspired him. The cow is what got him into the right path, quote unquote. So therefore, we would let him stick with that name. So maybe in our case, where this Russian family became Baalei Teshuvah through the dog, after they could call their shul after the dog. After. Who would have a question? Would you agree to this or disagree? Is it a good comparison or not a good comparison?
So there's a connection between
Here is the name of the individual. Over here is the name of Bet Hashem. It's different.
Because of the death of a dog.
Here's
But
the
he's
difference.
telling you there's a big nafkamina, a big difference. He says, how could you compare? Okay, so this guy wants to be known as the son of a cow. He said, it's an individual, right? But to name it Bet Hashem, a basic Knesset, to name it Bet Midrash, after a dog, Zichron Igor,
But Bet HaMikdash
that seems like a
also named by the name
tremendous bizayon, it seems like.
But Bet HaMikdash
That's
also
that's
named
different.
by
That's
Ariel.
different. When you have different,
Animals.
the shvatim that are compared to different animals, it's to
Not the
character
shvatim, the
traits.
Bet HaMikdash.
I'm saying it's not because of the naming after a certain. It's סיבות אחרות לזה. Over here, when you're naming the shul after the dog itself, plus another thing you could say is, פרה לפחות זה כשר. It's a kosher animal. You know, it's tahor. A dog, it says the Gemara compares someone as a dog. You have a chazir. It's a chutzpahdik animal, right? How could you compare maybe a kosher animal to a dog? Maybe there's no comparison. Efshar. Meir, מה אתה אומר? What do you say?
I think, it's proper to name it after the dog, obviously.
It's proper or not proper?
Proper, yeah.
It is proper.
Yeah, you can't actually.
I know, because you have a dog. That's why you're saying that. You have two dogs, huh? Okay. In any event. Okay, put that aside.
It's better to do it my way, and then if anybody asks, then first try my way. If not
What?
that, then try my way.
In any event, now Rav Zilberstein brings
My
down.
way's better.
He brings
His way
down
is a
another.
pshara way.
He wants to bring down a different raya for this concept, for this point. We have over here two pieces of Gemara from Yerushalmi in Terumot. We'll start off with Mem Daled Amud Bet, that's to the left. We'll read a very short story, and then we'll read Mem Daled Amud Aleph, it has another story. Mem Daled Amud Bet, right in the top, the first line, to the left of your sheets of it on the bottom. It says, Chad Barnash. There was a certain individual, Zamin Rabban, Chad Rabban, he invited, his min, a certain Rav, to a certain Seudah. He made a Seudah, whatever it may be. And he invited the Rav of the community. And what happens is, Ve'aitiv kalba gabe. If you look at the Pnei Moshe, he explains the situation a little more in depth. And he says, when this rabbi came to sit down at the table, it's a dais, right? And the Rav sits down, Baruch Hashem, and he's waiting to see what other Rabbanim are going to join him on his dais. And next thing you know, the guy brings a dog to sit down next to the Rav on the dais. The Rav sees this, and he says, I don't know, Bizayon ana? Chayav lecha? What am I? Did I cause you any harm? Did I owe you something? Why are you embarrassing me like this? Am I a nobody? You're sitting here on the dais next to a kelev, next to a dog? What's happening over here? So the Baal Habayit starts defending himself.
The dog's not complaining.
Huh? The dog's not complaining. Amar lei. He says, no, chas v'shalom. Rabbi, nothing against you. Rather, I'm doing this because I have a karat tov, a karat tov to the dog. What's the story? The guy tells the Rav, he says there were a group of gangsters, of robbers, of crooks that came to the city, and they would take people hostage. And you had to ransom, they would cause tsar, and who knows what they would cause. And one of them came along, one of them came along to my wife. He did it to my wife. And he nearly kidnapped her, assaulted her. And I had a dog, and came along my dog, he attacked this Rasha, and he bit him. And he saved my wife, Baruch Hashem. So I have a karat tov for my dog, for coming along and saving my wife. Therefore, I'm doing this to the dog. And that's how the story ends. It seems like the Rav didn't protest. He understood where this guy is coming from. And he left the story as it is. So, we see over here, Hakarat tov to the dog, that he actually gave him a cover in his Seudah, whatever his Seudah may have been. And then there's one more story. We go to the previous page over here, to the right. It says, we underline the line, the word, it's smack in the middle of the page. You see the Raya Chalbon, you see over there?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a certain story with, Raya is like a shepherd. Roe tzon, right? Roe. There was a shepherd, right? And this shepherd was milking his cow, right? It says, Chelbon Chalav, he was milking his cow. Va'ata chivya v'achal mineh. You know what chivya means?
Snake.
Snake, nachash. Right? Comes along a snake. Now the balabait, the guy that milked the cow, he and his family finished milking and they go inside for a few minutes. While they were inside the house, comes along a snake, hissing, goes into the bucket of milk. Next thing you know, it comes out and it goes on its path. Now, the snake came along and he ate from his milk. He drank from his milk. Obviously, he left some of its poison. And there was a dog. The dog of this balabait happened to notice this whole story. He saw this all happening before his very own eyes, and he saw that this snake went inside and probably poisoned it. Right? When the family, the balabait, the guy that owned the animal, came along, he wanted to go make himself some cereal, right, to drink some milk. The dog starts barking wildly. Starts barking. V'lo itbonenon. But the family ignored it. Okay, the dog is, having its mood swings, right? So he's barking. Beseder. What can we do? Besofa achil v'mit. At the end, it ate from it and it died. Now, there's two different ways of interpreting it. One way of interpreting it is that one of the family members ate from this milk and he died. But there's another way of interpreting it, as some Mepharshim bring down, and they say as follows: that the dog, and it's brought down in the Midrash, they bring down the story, that in reality the dog, when he saw that the balabait was about to drink out of his cup of milk, this dog went running, and it jumped into this bucket, it drank from the milk itself, and moments later it dropped dead. And the dog died. Not that one of the family members died by drinking. No, the dog went out of its way and put his own life on the line in order to save the mishpacha, the family. When the dog did this, they realized something's very weird. It suddenly died. They did a little investigation. They found out that the milk was be'emet poisoned by a certain snake. And it continues. It's actually what Psikta de Kana. He brings down that the Ro'im, the shepherds, they took the dog and they buried it, and they made a matzeva al kivro. They actually put a matzeva, a tombstone on his grave, and they wrote, "Po nignaz nefesh ha'ke'elev." This is where the soul, the dog, is buried. Now, obviously not in a Jewish cemetery, chas v'shalom, right? But the point is, they gave it a certain kavod as a karat atov for the dog saving their life. Story ends right there. So, based on these 3, 4, 5 stories that we just quoted, Rav Zilbershin says as follows. He says, yes, it's true. Is it mechubad to name a bet knesset, a shul, after a dog? Obviously not. But this family has a karat atov. This family that we're referring to, the Russian family in Ashkelon, right? Their dog is what ultimately got them to do teshuvah after it was killed in a car accident by this rabbi. And eventually they were inspired by the same rabbi that killed the dog. And they want to name the shul after the dog. He says, Zelo nora. Let them do it. You don't want to touch people's sensitive points. Right? To be Malchet, say, what are you talking about? That's very easy to do. He came along and he says, let it happen. Of course, I'm sure they were hoping that in a few weeks after they open the shul, they get a little more inspired, a little more Chazaq. Then they make a shiur Hashem. Maybe they'll call it, Zichron Agra or Zichron something else. And change the whole thing around. But the Chatchila, it says, if they want to start off by naming after the dog, says the Rav, it says, Mutar, let them do it. Be ma'alim ayin. Don't make a big deal out of it. Hakarat hatov. Don't make a big deal out of it. Let them do it. Why is this? Hakarat hatov. Just shows us what the power of hakarat hatov is all about. What it means, even to an animal, to a parrot, to a kelev. Hakarat hatov, you got to show it. I mean, we all know Moshe Rabbeinu, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, hit the water. Hit the water. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? I can't hit the water. Aaron, you do it.
Yeah, but then...
Why didn't he do it? Yes?
He did at the end.
What do you mean he did it at the end?
He didn't get into Israel because...
No, that's a different story. One second, that's a different story. What we're trying to say is, he refused to hit the water and turn it into dam because the water saved his life. But the water has feelings. There's the feelings. The water has no feelings. Right? You know, like we cover the bread on Friday night, on Shabbos morning. Why do we cover the bread? In order to what? Not to embarrass the bread. Usually we make hamotzi first, and here we are in Shabbat. On Shabbos we make the bracha on the wine first, so we don't want to embarrass the bread. Tagili, the bread has feelings? What feelings does the bread have? Elamai. Obviously it's not about the bread, it's not about the water. It's in order to make us accustomed to having feelings towards people. And it's sensitivity towards people. If you're going to cover the bread and embarrass your wife or your children, then what are you doing? So why'd you cover the bread? In other words, the whole idea is to have, in order for you to practice your sensitivity, you could practice on inanimate objects. That's the way. Remember in yeshiva, one of our Oelbaum used to give us real good tips how to control our emotions, how to control our anger problems, our patience. So I was very impatient. I still am very impatient, but I was very, very impatient back then. And he gave me a good tip of how to control it. Now, it's not going to work b'shat ha'ma'aseh when you're dealing with your family members or your friends. So he went through my different situations in life. I used to live on the second floor of an apartment building, and there was an elevator. So this is what he tells me. He tells me, anytime you come home, click the elevator. Click the button. If you see that the elevator is past the third floor, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, right? You wait for it. If you see the elevator is in the lobby, the first and second floor, then you take the stairs. This way, what's going to happen is, when it's past the third floor, I'm going to wait and work on my patience. And when it's under, I'm going to work on my laziness. You're a young guy, go take the stairs. Right? In other words, the only way for you to work on yourself properly and without offending anyone, you know, if I decide to take the stairs one day when it's on the fourth floor, you won't get offended in the elevator, right? So the only way to work is really to work with inanimate objects. When it comes to a stop sign, a red light, a yellow, whatever it is, work with these items and it's going to help you exercise your muscles when it comes to other matters.
Control your emotion.
Exactly. You know, the famous Ramban, where the Torah tells us, we're going to read in a few weeks, it says, Kedoshim Tihiyu. What does it mean, Kedoshim Tihiyu? What does it mean to be Kedoshim Tihiyu? What does the Ramban tell us? Oh, in other words, you might think Kedoshim Tihiyu means you should wear, you know, Erbenu Tam Tefillin, and you should only eat this type of meat, and you should only do this, and you should do that. Pseder. It says Kedoshim Tihiyu. You should be poresh from what's mutar lecha. You should separate yourself from what's permitted for you. You know, you have all these buffet dinners, or you have a smorgasbord, and you're there, and you're eating a piece of chicken and a little piece of meat and rice, and you're full. You're satiated. Everything's good. But you say, let me take another piece. It's all glad kosher. Everything's perfectly fine, kosher, at the highest standard. Could you eat it? Of course you're allowed to eat it. But Kedoshim Tihiyu, it's telling you, hold yourself back from eating that. Hold yourself back. And you know what's going to happen? If you hold yourself back from that ta'ava, of a permissible taiva, right, you're going to exercise your muscles to hold yourself back from a forbidden taiva. Because how could you hold yourself back from a forbidden taiva if your muscles are not ready for it? You can't fight it off. So you practice by fighting off something that's mutter for you.
Self-control.
Like we have some delicious cakes here for breakfast, right? Sometimes you want to take a second piece and a third piece, right? So I tell the younger guys, listen, control yourselves. You control yourself with the cake, you control yourself with some other things in life. That's what it comes down to, Kedoshim Tihiyu. That's what it is. So in any event, the concept of Hakarat HaTov is something that is a tremendous, tremendous lesson that we learn over here. How Rav Zilbeshin felt, and that's how he paskin, that you should be ma'alim ayin and let the family name the shul after the dog, because the mice of the dog is what made them do teshuvah. I just want to discuss for the last 10-15 minutes another point over here with regards to Eli Kohen's children. We just mentioned that their children really didn't do the Maisa Bia with any woman. Chaz v'shalom. Anyone that thinks, like the Gemara Yuma says, anyone that says, B'nei Eli chatu, einu ele to'eh, he's making a mistake. It's a ta'ut. So we find this concept in many other scenarios. Like our dear friend is pointing out, it says regarding Ruvain, right? Vayishkav is Bila. No, says the Gemara, einu ele to'eh. Rather, what he did was, he switched. Right. And then it says, what, Reuben?
Also David.
Oh, David HaMelech, right? Regarding David HaMelech, same exact story. Anyone that thinks David Melech made a no, ain't no Torah. Who else do we see this by?
Shlomo HaMelech too, no?
David
We have a ma'amar in Chazal where it says, if you think ain't no Torah.
David.
We said David. We have another case with the children of
Aaron Cohen, no?
Shmuel HaNavi. What does it say about Shmuel HaNavi's children? It said that Notim Achar HaBetza. Right? Shmuel HaNavi had people coming complaining to him, they want a king. We need a melech like all the other. And it says about his children, Notim Achar HaBetza. They used to go after, where the money is, or where there is a... Now why did it say that? A few reasons. Number one, they were Levi'im, and sometimes they would throw out a word, by the way, Meiser, this and that. Meiser Rishon, if you need somebody to give it to, you know where to go. Right? So it could have gone to a different person, but I went to them instead. Right? But on top of that, it says that Shmuel HaNavi, what would he do? He would actually go from city to city, me'ir le'ir, in order to inspire, to judge, to give shiurim. And his children had a different shita. They would stay in their locale, right? And whoever wanted to be judged or be inspired, come to us. Our doors are open. B'chavod, we're not locking the doors. Anyone's welcome. But people were so used to Shmuel's way of doing things that by his children not doing it, they said, no, these people they're doing it for financial considerations, right? But we see over here 4 or 5 times where Chazal bring down that if you think they sinned, eno ela toeh. And on this, the Ben Ish Chai brings down, it's a basic concept that we have that applies to anyone with stature. Anyone with stature, such as these great people like David and Reuven, right, and the children of Shmuel, people of stature, whenever you do something small, be'einei ha'am it's big, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will consider it big as well, to a certain degree. Because people expect more out of you. That's why, says the Ben Ish Chai, brings that from the Chesed HaAlafim. Chesed HaAlafim was authored by Rabbi Eliezer Papo. People don't know him for his book. Yeah, they don't know him for Chesed. They know him for his book Pele Yoetz. Pele Yoetz is a famous Mussar Sefer that goes based on the Aleph base, right? And so the Chesed HaAlafim asks a very simple question. He says, why is it that we have to say the vidui every day and we say Asham Nu, Bogad Nu, Gozal Nu in plural form, number one. And number two, what if I didn't do this sin? Can I skip one of them? I know I didn't steal anything. Right? I know I didn't speak Lashon Hara. I know I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Can we skip these things? So he brings down 3 or 4 reasons why you have to say everything and why you should say it in the plural. He says, number one, he says, Kulam Arevim Zeh Lezeh. Right? It says about the para of Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, that was Mechal Shabbos, whatever it is, speaking of parot, right? And it wasn't even his par, it wasn't his animal. But the Gemara says it was his neighbor's animal. And because he didn't rebuke his neighbor, he didn't point it out. And by the way, I don't know if you realize, but this is a little problem. He didn't point it out, therefore it's what? It's on his cheshbon as well. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh. Furthermore, he brings down, you never know what you did in your previous Gilgulim. Who you were, what your problems were, what sins you did, what you have to do a tikkun for. Therefore, even if you may feel it doesn't apply to you, you still got to say it. On top of that, he says, a person of stature is judged differently, like these 4 individuals that we just mentioned before. That a person that is known to be a frum Jew, who does something wrong, the media will exploit it and blow it up much greater than it is, and to cause a much greater chilul Hashem. And therefore you're going to be held more responsible for it. And on top of that, he adds, a last thing he says, Yesh averot kalot, there are many, quote-unquote, light sins. Shedash adam ba'akava, which a person tramples on. Not a big deal. V'chashuvin kachamurot. And it's considered as chamurs. So, for example, what does the Gemara tell us? Chachamim tell us in Gemara Bava Metzia Daf Nun Chet, right? Hamapim bnei chavero berabim, כאילו, שופך דמים, it's like you murdered him. הכועס, כאילו, עובד עבודה זרה. המתגאה, כאילו, עבודה זרה. There's many different cases where seemingly small things are really blown up greater, not by just the public. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells you that. Therefore, he says every single person must say, the vidui. Again, there's different minhagim amongst Ashkenazim. Do you say it every day? You don't say it every day, the vidui.
No.
How often do you say it?
Yeah.
Only Yom Kippur? Once a year.
Right.
There are others that say it every Monday and Thursday. Sfaradim say it 2 or 3 times a day. 2 or 3 times. Listen, we're not living the same lifestyle as you, you know.
Sfard also they do. Sfard also.
גם חסידים אומרים את זה כל יום. נכון, except when they have your side, עוקפים את זה. נכון, כל יום יש תיקון, נכון. Whatever the case may be, the reason why, the Tur brings down the reason.
Yeah.
But the reason why many people don't say it the way it is. They say it twice a day, 3 times a day. Some people say it before they go to sleep as well, right? And because the worry was, if you said every day, you're going to say it robotically. You won't say it with kavana. You start, you're rushing right through it. You don't really put your heart into it. That's why many Ashkenazim don't say it every day, and they limit it to as much as they could limit it. I mean, not to say it every day, but a person should know that if you are saying it, like some of the people in the crowd, say it with kavanah. Don't just blurt it out. Your mouth is saying one thing and your heart is thinking something else. A person has to do real teshuvah. Now, Zayin, what is Zayin? I want to see, the Ashkenazim have the same thing that we have. What is Zayin? Zadnu. Yeah. Oh, you say it every day? You don't say it every day. So you don't say it every day, and you still remember it. Unbelievable. Any event. Right? So now, Zayin is Zadnu. What does Zadnu mean?
We did by
B'mezid. We did things b'mezid. Right? We did averot b'mezid. Says, the Ben Ish Chai says, no, it doesn't necessarily mean you did averot b'mezid. He says, there's many things that we did b'shogeg. I didn't know it was usher. I didn't realize it was a problem. But because you didn't come to learn, shgagat Talmud, it's like a mezid. It's like a mezid, chas v'shalom. Right? Therefore, he said, a person has to be careful. We always like to say, shogeg, I'd rather be a shogeg, But if you have the opportunity to learn the topic, I think there's a whole question. Do you have this concept of tinuk shenishbat in Eretz Yisrael? It's a major machloket in the poskim. It's not so simple. Many come along and say, tinuk shenishbat. They were raised in this environment. Others will say, what do you mean? It's no secret. There's yeshivas all over Eretz Yisrael. There's cure organizations all over Eretz Yisrael. Right? These people have the achrayis to go check it out. Go see what it's all about. How could you say tinuk shenishbat? Right? Others argue on this point. But whatever the case may be, says the Ben Ish Chai, Shgagat Talmud, he brings down the Chazaq. So he says when you're saying Zadnu in the video, you're not referring to Mezid, you're referring to Shegeg that becomes a Mezid. That's what he says. Another thing he points out lastly, with Moshe Rabbeinu's statement after the Chet HaEgel. He says, V'solachta la'avonenu u'chadatenu, right?
We don't say this every morning. It's exactly the opposite.
מה זאת אומרת?
We say first Chatanu Avinu Pashanu.
Oh, אז רגע.
And he said in the opposite.
So first of all, let's bוא נעיין בזה. Well, there's three types of sins that we have. We have a chet, we have an avon, and we have a pesha. What's the difference? Chet means when you do something
On purpose.
No, chet is b'shoigig.
Yeah.
Inadvertently. I didn't know. I wasn't aware. Right? No, chet. Avon is when you do it b'mezid, knowingly.
Yeah.
But I had a taiva. Listen, I wanted to eat it. I couldn't hold myself back. I was hungry. I was this. Such a good smell. Whatever it is. You know it's usher, but you couldn't hold yourself back. You had a taiva. And then you have pesha. What does pesha mean? Pesha means, I know it's asur, but I'm going to do it because it's asur. I don't care. Asur dachol. Let me eat it. Right? It's mamish done the hachis. So now, with this being said, pesha is a hachis. Poshea.
Shiur means negligent.
Poshea means, in this context, pesha means a person that does an avera lehachis. Right? So with this being said, the question is on Moshe Rabbeinu. Why does he say, U'salachta la'avonenu u'chatatenu? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Chatatenu u'la'avonenu. You start with the lower level, and then you work your way up. You work your way up to a higher level. So the Mefarshim say as follows. They say we know there's 2 types of teshuvah. There's teshuvah me'ahava. There's teshuvah me'ira. Right? When a person does teshuvah me'ahava, what happens to his averot? They become mitzvot, zchuyot. So all the dvarim asurim that we're eating is like you're eating matzah and Pesach. Right? You're drinking dal kozot. If you do teshuvah me'ahava, wow, look at this creation, unbelievable. Look at the sun, the moon, the stars, the marechet, the guf, the human body, unbelievable. I want to do teshuvah me'ahava. Oh, your sins are turned into zchuyot. If you do teshuvah me'ira, then what happens? Your sins go down a notch. My mezid becomes a shogeg. So I ate this knowing it's asur. I had a taiva, I ate it, I know it. But now I did teshuvah, be'emet, me'ira, I was scared about the punishment, right? Then that mezid becomes a shogeg. So now, in this case, with the chet ha'egel, Am Yisrael was fearing they're about to be destroyed. They're about to be wiped out. They did teshuvah yirah. It says Moshe Rabbeinu, v'salachta la'avonenu ulchadatenu. First forgive our mezid, we're doing teshuvah me'ira. And now that mezid becomes a shogeg, ulchadatenu as well, and forgive us for our chataim as well. And that's how the Ben Ish Chai explains this. Many other Mefarshim say the same exact thing. But anyway, just to have a sikum, as we see that the Rav is here, we give the second shiur. We have two things. First of all, we see the tremendous concept of Hakarat Tov, that Rav Zilbish in Paskin, you can name a shul after a dog because of the feelings that they had after this dog. Right? Ein made him do teshuvah. As we saw the Gemara with Rav Yochanan Beturta, that Turta is the name of a para. He became a Baal Tshuva through he became a ger through a para. And we saw the other two Gemarot in Yerushalmi that discussed the case of the dog sitting at the dais with the Rabbanim, and also the case of the dog that was given a matzeva that says po nignat nefesh ha-kelev. That's number one. And number two, we see the concept of vidui, of how important it is for a person to realize there's 4 or 5 different types of averot that you could do, whether it's because you're responsible for your neighbor's sins, or your family's sins, or whatever it may be, or because of previous gilgulim, or because of your stature where you did a chilul Hashem, or, like we said, lastly, averot ktanot, that people are dash b'hem, and it's really considered great, like kas, mabim penei chavaro, v'chule v'chule. And lastly, we see over here the concept of teshuvah, how Moshe Rabbeinu went along and he says, forgive us for our sins. It depends, you're doing a me'ava or me'ira. And when he did a me'ira, like we did by the case of the chet ha'egel, he started off by stating the mezid first, and then the shogeg.